I'm Aurora Crone. I named myself after a dead dog. And this is April 6, '08. And
Where are we?
I hung out at the, we're at Judy Beesmer's house in Slaterville Springs, Brookendale, just outside of Ithaca, New York. I was part of the peace camp before we even found the land or bought the land. So I was kind of plugged in before we even found the land. And I was kind of back behind the scenes. I didn't go to meetings. I didn't go to marches. I didn't get arrested. But I washed a lot of dishes, and I picked up a lot of garbage, and I went to the dump a whole lot. And I helped with parking, and I helped with security, and I was kind of like the gopher. You know, anybody needed help setting up their tents or wanted to know where they needed to park, you know, I was kind of the gopher person, you know, that, and if I couldn't answer their questions, I knew who might. You know, Estelle might know, or Michelle Crone might, if I couldn't answer their questions. You know, I was the gopher. Hey, a good gopher is hard to find. And that was my roles. And so one of my memories was when Bella Abzug was there. This was like the first week when it was like all the nasty, you know, it was like hundreds and thousands of people there, all the demonstrations, and, you know, the people that were really angry about us being there. Bella Abzug, I think she was our senator at the time. She got the state police to line up right in front of the house to protect us, because there was like these angry people, you know, that didn't get what we were doing, and these angry people, you know, kill the queers, you know, go back home, Pinko Dykes, communist, you know. It's like, I'm not a communist. But anyway, Bella Abzug, she got the state police to line up right in front of, I don't know if you remember this, but a whole line of state police, right, and they just stood at attention. But it was Bella Abzug that got them there, just to stand there as a presence, you know, to be, she kind of, you know, just to having them be there was kind of, made it feel a little safer. But it was her that got them there right in front, and they didn't do anything, they just stood in a line right in front of the house. And it was Bella Abzug that got the state police, because she was like a senator at the time, and she had the official stuff to get them there. So that was one of my cool memories. And then Barbara Dem, it was the same, like, you know, weeks when it was like media from all over the world were there, and, you know, and angry people, and, you know, hundreds or thousands of women from all over the world there, and then the angry people too, you know. Barbara Dem, you know her, right?
Knew her.
Yeah, knew her. I know, she died a few years ago. Ooh. Anyway, there was in the front yard, because, you know, men weren't allowed in the back, but, you know, there was this really angry man. He was a Vietnam vet. He was really angry, you know, communist Pinko Dykes, you know, so he was really angry, pissed off, you know, and she just actually sat down on the ground, and then he sat down next to her, and they ended up talking for like over an hour, and she was able to kind of sort of explain to him what it was about. You know, we weren't anti-American, we weren't anti, you know, this, we were just like, peace, 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 thou shalt not kill, non-violence. And it was way cool, because he came in there, he was really pissed off, angry Vietnam vet, you know, what are you doing here, you know. And Barbara Deming, she just sat down on the ground, and then he sat down right next to her, and they had this long conversation, and she was able to, like, I'm not sure if he actually totally agreed with what we were doing, but at least he calmed down and he wasn't as pissed off and angry. So that was another cool moment. And then there's the Nick Castro's, that restaurant, which was just down the road. It was a diner restaurant, and we would go there for breakfast, or we'd go there for lunch, and it was, you know, a lot of down and dirty, because we've been camping out, so we go in there down and dirty, and some of us had, you know, dyed hair or shaved heads and piercings and tattoos, and this was like in Romulus, New York. They were like, oh, they're like, who are these people? And this restaurant, it was a whole family-run restaurant with all their kids worked in, and they were always so nice, you know, and they lent us a whole lot of big, huge cooking pots. big, huge cooking pots to cook the food over our fire pits. And I remember trying to clean the beautiful restaurant pots, but we're cooking food over fire pits, and they're all black on the bottom. I just remember trying to clean up the fire soot on the bottom of the pots to return to them. And this family, this restaurant, they actually, because it was such a controversy, I mean, the neighborhood, they were freaked out. They didn't know what to make of us, and they were angry. A lot of people were angry. So this restaurant, this family, every Sunday, at 1 o'clock, they opened up their restaurant for us and the community to come and just talk together in their restaurant, just to brainstorm, and so we could tell them who we were, and they could, tell us how pissed off they were. And do you remember that? I mean, they opened up their restaurant at 1 o'clock every Sunday to have the community come in, all of us, crazy dykes with tattoos and shaved heads, with the people. And it was that family was amazing, the way they helped bring the different, the community with us together to talk about what was going on, So, yeah, man, they were amazing, that family, that restaurant. Oh, and then, so, cooking, there was who knows, hundreds of people on the land cooking food for them, and we got donated food from lots of different people, And then there was one point that we just kept getting a whole lot of, it was the end of the season, a whole lot of zucchini. And that was always, at one point, that was all we were getting, is tons of zucchini. And somebody made a sign, the signs where it says no nukes, somebody made a sign that said no zooks. Because we were at that point, that's all we were getting was zucchini. And then during the same era, the Ithaca Times newspaper, every year they have a vote-in thing of the best restaurant, the best dog park, the best dressed, the worst dressed, the worst place to go to the bar or whatever. But there was on one of the worst categories were peace camp punks. Because that was in the era, it was what, nowadays you see people all the time with piercings and shaved heads and tattoos and, dyed hair with purple and green. But back then, you didn't see it. But a lot of the women from Europe, a lot of the dykes from Europe, they were doing all that. And some of us from music festivals too. But anyway, the worst dressed were the peace camp punks.
What were you doing before the peace camp idea?
I lived at Northwoods. And
tell us about Northwoods. What was Northwoods?
Well, women's land, 156 acres of land, and when I moved there, I don't know, when I moved there were 6 ducks, 6 dogs, and 6 cats, and lots, and then over the years, lots of different women lived there, and Northwoods, how do you explain Northwoods? Anyway, women's land, with a dream of having it be living back on the earth, being sort of self-sufficient, women living together, and when I moved in there, that we were trying to be no rules, I don't know how, not quite anarchist, but no rules, just we can all live together in peace and harmony without having rules.
When did you move there, you remember? If the camp happened in 83, how long had you been out there?
I probably maybe a couple years, 3, 4 years maybe before the camp opened up.
And how old were you back in that day?
29, 30. When I moved to Northwoods, and then the peace camp happened later.
Aurora, do you remember any musical activities at the encampment?
Well, I did play music here and there, because I was always schlepping around all my instruments back then. I don't schlep them around as much as I used to, but I have a good photograph at my house. Me and Blue Jay on top of the bus. I just brought my bongos and another couple drums, and she had a mandolin. It was way cool. We're sitting on top of the. This was actually years later when there wasn't hardly anybody there. In fact, when we went, there might not have been anybody there, but it was so cool playing instruments on top of the bus, and the way it would bounce off of the barn. You just hit one thing on top of the bus, and it would bounce off the barn. It would go back and forth, back and forth. So it was
cool.
Yeah, did you ever do that?
I never played on top of the bus. No.
Oh, it's really cool because it would cool, but a little like boing, 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 boing. It would bounce off the barn and go back and forth, back and forth.
Right.
And I do vaguely sort of remember setting up my trap set in the middle of the yard, and I know Susie told me about that today, and I was like, oh, I kind of sort of remember doing that.
Where the summer kitchen was.
Yeah, I mean, I was always schlepping my instruments around,
a little concert there.
begging people to play music with me. Please play with me.
Uh-huh. And then I do remember quite a number of times you with instruments.
Yeah, and then you and me and Z, and that was like years later too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, over the years, you went back and forth. Do you remember some of the other things that you might have helped with or done? Do you remember cleaning the stove?
Oh,
and
yes.
the chimneys?
I didn't. That's interesting that you bring that up. I meant to put that on my list, and I didn't. Really, actually, I was thinking about it this morning. I remember when Z and I went there to clean the chimney. We climbed up on the roof, and the pipe was, pitched. So the pipe was too tall. So chair up on top of the roof, and I stood on the chair, and Z's like holding me on top of this chair to get the pipe and
put the brush down the chimney.
Yeah.
I think that chair stayed up on that roof for years.
Oh, really?
Because it was the only way to reach.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you all were the ones who first set that up.
Yeah.
Wasn't the chair tied to the chimney?
Oh, maybe.
To keep it from.
Oh, it might have been. And then I remember Z holding me while I'm up there. Well, sorry. Then it was like years later, years later, was there, and I spent maybe a week or two there, and I can't remember if you were. Phoenix might have been living in the barn then. I'm not quite sure, or in the bus. But the barn, you couldn't even step in the door. It was filled up. Nobody had even touched anything for years. You could hardly even walk in. It was a mountain of stuff. Mountains and mountains of stuff from day one all the way up. So I had a task. I'm the garbage queen. I was like, oh, cool, this is something I can do. So I spent like maybe a week sorting through everything, composting and recycling and throw away, and stuff, well, should this get thrown away because it's, documenting, I mean, it was just in a heap. You couldn't even walk in. It was a heap. So I spent like a week, and I'm pretty good about it, all these different piles, keepers and savers and question marks and, and then I got the garbage stuff out, the end of the driveway, for the garbage, and I mean, I spent so much time, and there was maybe 5 or 6 of us there at the time, but I was doing that in the school because that's my expertise. And then I got it all sorted out, and then there was a woman that was like just really upset because she wanted to do consensus meetings about which pile to put which in and to do what pile to do what in, and
I take it meetings were not something you enjoyed doing.
Well, but consensus, that's a cool thing. But in the meantime, nobody had even stepped into the barn for years, and that's fine, But in the meantime, I had already, and I wasn't making any decision, but I had already cleaned it up, put everything in piles, and then she was kind of, you could walk in, but she was like, she didn't like the piles that I put the piles in after. She was there the whole time I was doing it, but then after it was all done, she was like upset because I didn't. Well, that can't go in the recycling pile. That has to go in the keeper pile. And it's like, But I got that barn cleaned up, man.
Do you have any recollection of, give us an idea of what kind of stuff you would keep and what stuff you would throw out when you're going through that?
Well, any kind of paperwork I would keep. Garbage I would throw away. Cooking pots or any kind of utensils I would put in another pile. This is usable. There were some of from the very first year. Remember those huge tall puppets? They were on the video. They were stuffed and buried underneath tons of stuff. You remember those huge puppets? And I knew some of the women that made them, actually. But they were buried underneath piles of other garbage and stuff. So I finally got them out, and I didn't want to throw them out because that was like documenting. I mean, you didn't want to, even though they were all kind of sort of crushed, and smushed and underneath tons of stuff had been for years. But, I didn't want to throw them out, so they got put into another pile, because,
Were there banners and those?
Banners and stuff, all that kind of stuff. And it was all just buried underneath mounds of stuff. So all the banners and stuff, I put in that kind of pile because I didn't want them to be garbage, or I didn't want them to make that decision. But they were like keepers because documenting what went on, so...
Kind of the clipboards and the grunts. Did you ever experience that?
I think not from other people, but in my own mind a little bit, because at one moment I did graffiti on the kitchen wall. Do you remember what I wrote?
No, but tell us.
Kitchen wall where?
Well, right in the house by the sink, and I think maybe I just was feeling cranky and getting overwhelmed about, the meeting people versus the garbage queens and the classism in my mind at the point. But anyway, I wrote, I can't quite remember. I wrote something like, by the sink on the wall, something about wash your own dishes, the maids are working at the depot. Something to that effect.
How was that received?
Well, then somebody else responded to that on the wall, something to the effect of, maids working at the depot are hard workers too, or something to that effect. That wasn't quite what got responded to me, but it was like, yeah, that's right, that's right, there's... So, I was feeling a little irritated because, the women that would spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours sitting at meetings trying to reach consensus about getting the dishes washed, but in the meantime...
The dishes could be done.
Yeah. So it was, so I'm not sure if I'm quite answering your question, but there was class issues, but at the same time, after whoever wrote back to my graffiti, it was like, well, but that's cool, because the meeting people, that's a way cool thing. I don't know how to do it. It's not my thing. I can't do it. I don't have the patience. I don't have the words. But it's a way cool thing. The people who can do that, it's a way cool thing. So I really did a little flip in my mind about classism, because I was feeling a little irritated about class. The people who knows how to use computers and can talk really good, and I wasn't giving them enough credit because I was picking up their garbage. But it was really cool though, because that graffiti thing, it was like, it did a little turnaround in my brain that giving them credit, because that's a way cool, because the meaning, it all wouldn't have happened if it weren't for that, So it was kind of cool that I got called on the way I articulated. So it takes all pieces to create the whole. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So.
Why do you think it had something to do with classism?
Well, that was my feeling about it, because it seemed like the meeting goers were college-educated people who had education and were able to, talk and made more money. I guess I'm calling it classism, but I guess maybe it wasn't necessarily classism. I guess maybe that's not the right word. It's just the down and dirty workers versus the talkers and note takers and meeting goers. So that
Were similar things going on at Northwoods?
well, yeah, because they would want to like have meetings that lasted for hours about cleaning the house and doing the dishes and putting up work wheels. About, okay, you're gonna, in the meantime, just wash your fucking dish, please.
Did you meet women that were kind of both ways, or was like people were either doing meetings or working? Did you ever find women that sort of did more fluid?
Oh yeah, Jody Bear, Shad, Michelle Crone, me. I mean, Jody Bear, she's a Politico, but she's down and dirty working. That's just one example. So yeah, and Shad and.
Did Jody enjoy doing meetings?
I don't know. I wasn't doing meetings. I was going to the dump.
Good one. Good one.
But she talked pretty well on the tape. She's a good talker.
Ooh, do you remember some of the women that were dump runners with you, or were you a lone job?
I think I was kind of a lone job, but I would get other women to help me. I can't remember any names. Although I was driving Shad's truck, the truck was named Mother Earth. We used to name our trucks. And
How often would you have to go to the dump?
oh man, I don't know. Quite often. I mean, there'd be mountains of it. I don't remember quite how often, but
Do you remember how far away it was to the dump?
it was not that far away. It was maybe a 15-20 minute drive, if I remember right.
And did women, like, was there one certain area where everybody dumped their own trash, or did you have to go?
Well, we were pretty good about having, our garbage areas and our recycling areas, but, then a lot of it would just get dumped here and there and everywhere, and and it was like picking up stuff from way back at Amazon Acres, and then this area, and then that area, and then the house area, and all these different areas, and the cooking area, and so getting all that together in one truck, funky truck, Mother Earth funky truck, to end up going to the dump. So it was like spread out all over the place, and I think I was actually asking for actually now I remember asking for volunteers to help me, and a lot of it I think it was like maybe women like me who were just there and didn't know what to do, and hey, you want to help? It's like, oh, cool. Yeah, so that was another thing I did. Just like, hey, you want something to do? Oh yeah, you want to help me go to the dump? Yeah. So I did get a lot of volunteers.
How'd you do you have any memory of how you got money to get gas in the truck? Did someone else gas it up, or how'd you guys do that?
That was probably, I'm assuming it was Shad's truck. I'm assuming it was her money to put into the gas in the truck, because it wasn't mine.
It just was there.
Well, it was Shad's truck, and she had money somewhat, and so I'm just kind of assuming that Shad put the gas money into her truck, but I might be lying. Well, Samoa, Kim, yeah, Phoenix I actually had met before the Peace Camp, maybe the year before the Peace Camp, because I think we met her at Michigan Music Festival, and then we dragged her back to Northwoods, and then she went to Newmer, and then so I met Phoenix just before the Peace Camp. It's the same era. Well, that's where I met you.
Cool.
And Cindy, well, no, Z was like years and years and years later.
You teasing stuff?
No, Z was many, 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 many years after the first years of the Peace Camp.
Yeah, but hey, you can talk about the whole thing. I mean,
Yeah.
the Peace Camp went on till 2006.
Oh, you want me to keep track?
You met Z at the encampment? You didn't meet her at Northwoods or something?
No, I met Z here. Z was like
Yeah.
15 years after the first years of the peace camp or something.
Yeah.
But where
Yeah.
did you meet her in Ithaca?
Yeah, I met her in Ithaca. She was living back in my woods in the yurt. But that was many years
Okay.
after the first years of the peace camp.
Yeah.
You know,
Did
and
you
then
ever go to the peace camp after those first years?
wait, what?
Did you ever go to the peace camp after those first years?
Oh yeah, I went up until a couple of years ago. I was, would be there once in a while helping Estelle cut the lawn and do this, that, and the other thing.
Why would you be up there?
Because it's my heart, Estelle's heart, and trying to figure out if it could ever end up turning into community land. A dream. It's our dream.
What? Tell us about your dream.
Well, women's land to be able to live on in the country. Together, communally, I don't know what the word is, but
You thought that you had a dream that could happen at the peace encampment?
Well, I gave up that dream long time ago. I had that dream about Northwoods too, but it was still, Estelle was still wanting it to be, land where we could live together and live communally, and so I didn't actually, even after, for years, you were still wanting to be there, but I loved the dream, but it's like, I don't think I want to live in Romulus, New York. I don't have a car. It's too far away from Ithaca. I love being closer to Ithaca.
That's a good thing to. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, about where it was located or why it wouldn't work for you?
Well, partly because I don't have a car. I don't think I'll ever have a car. I stopped driving years ago, and the land out there was beautiful, but I like being close to downtown Ithaca because the community in Ithaca is amazing. Everything is, I love living around Ithaca, New York. The politics, the nature, the people that are here, and I don't want to be that isolated, even though I am isolated where I live. I'm a hermit. I hardly ever talk to anybody except for once or twice a year. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not that much.
You haven't told us if you knew anything about nuclear weapons before you got to the peace camp.
Oh yeah, I was a peacenik since the Vietnam War in the early 60s. I was still in I graduated from high school in 69, but in the mid 60s, during the Vietnam War, when, all the protest and, peace, nonviolent things, Martin Luther King and Joan Baez. Oh, that's when I first it's like, oh, nonviolence, no war. That's when I got turned on to it. It's like, oh, this makes sense to me, even though there was nobody around me that...
Oops, hold on, let me just turn it.
I wasn't even all that into her music at that point, a little bit, but, But my father actually had a Playboy magazine. I know. And they did interviews with people, at length interviews, and they interviewed Joan Baez in Playboy magazine, and she just talked about nonviolence, anti-war, nonviolence. And I read that thing, and it was like, man, somebody else thinks the same way as I do. Interview in Playboy magazine, can you believe that?
And
By Joan Baez.
And you were in high school?
Yeah, I think I was maybe 14 years old, maybe. And that was like, wow, somebody else thinks the same way as I do. And that's when I got really, yay, I'm not the only one.
Where'd you go to high school?
Well, it was different places, but this was a suburb of Albany, New York. Small town.
And after that, you were able to go to some marches and stuff against the war?
I didn't even go to, well, actually, when I only went to college 1 year, and I did do marches, and it was still during the Vietnam War, and it was the same, 69, 70, it was the same year that Kent State and the other one was Alabama. It was the same year where the students got shot and killed. So that was the 1 year. I only went to college 1 year. That was that year. So I did go to marches, and I went to a small college, and a small town, suburb of Albany. But it was the same year of Kent State, and marching with some of the people from the college. Oh, I remember some. We're marching. It was just, there might have been 20 of us or something. It was small, but these guys came running out of the bar with their screwed. They were wanting to beat us up because they were so pissed off at us, and we were just being kind of little small marchers going peace, peace, and the Vietnam War. But it was the same. It might have been a week or two after Kent State. And anyway.
You're a long time activist.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing any peace work now?
Day to day. Oh, the labyrinth. Mm-hmm.
What do you do know it? What's the labyrinth have to do with peace?
It's your turn. We call it the peace path. But,
Tell us about it. It's your interview.
oh no, I can't even. That's a whole nother huge story. It's your turn talking about the labyrinth, the peace path.
You don't want to say
Meditate.
one? Can you just give us a bumper sticker of it? Not of the peace path. I mean, say it in just 2 sentences, or one drawing with your finger.
Well, wasn't my idea. It's a Buddhist meditation path they made out of sand and pictures to meditate on a lot of different things. But basically, peace. And Estelle and I have been making them all over the place at festivals and stuff to walk, and we call it the peace path. But it wasn't our original idea. The design that we do, which is called a labyrinth, which is a Buddhist, they thought it up. Well, actually, it's all over the world, not just the Buddhist.
Yeah.
Yeah, all over the world. They found cave drawings and
It's
all over the world. So,
How long have you been doing that?
well, Estelle and I, this is going to be our 12th year, but I've done it a number of years before that, and that's a whole another long story. I'm not sure if I can articulate it. Estelle, talk about that.
But it has some, for you, it has some
Peace,
connection
peace,
to
peace, peace,
in the
peace.
world.
Yeah, and when we do it at the festivals that we do it, people ask us, some people think what are the rules? And we keep saying there are no rules except for nonviolence, the way we do ours. But, lots of cultures over the world have different ideas about what the labyrinth is, different spiritualities and stuff, and some people think you need to just meditate and be quiet and walk, and some people, think different things, and that's all cool. But when Estelle and I do it, we call it the peace path, and that there are no rules except for nonviolence, because some people say, who come and do the ones that we make, you got to walk all the way in, then you got to walk all the way back out. And some people get really upset watching other people not finishing it, and we say, that's fine. If it's not your cup of tea, that's fine. There are no rules except for nonviolence.
Nice.
Are there any other things you'd like to tell us about the peace camp?
No.
Would you like to be done with this interview?
Yes.
Can I go home now? Another minute? We kept you longer than you wanted to
I
be kept.
know,
I
but
appreciate you being patient
I know, but
with
thank you
us.
for asking me questions, because I got talking more than.
You have
You-
such a great perspective. I mean, really, we've done a lot of interviews, and it's so important, your little piece of it, because we haven't heard those stories in that perspective. So thanks for being patient with us.
Thanks for helping me, because I'm like, you have no idea how scared
You know
I
what the
was.
truth is? Honey, I did not ask one single question
Oh,
until
and
the very end. You talked the whole time.
Great, you've
It
done
was
some
a
great things for
great
us.
interview.
But can we talk now off camera about your sex with Joan Baez? I want to hear more.
My sex with Joe
She was a
Biden.
Playboy bunny? I never knew Joan Baez was a Playboy bunny.